At first, I was going to reply to this with a snarky, "Here's what your search bar looks like, use it" type comment, but I figured, what if this person is genuinely interested in the answer to his question? I would be doing a disservice by not providing some search terms. Now, if you're someone who has mostly been looking at creationist content on YouTube, then the top results of these searches will probably lead you to the claims, but just keep on scrolling down and you will find the debunks as well.
Either God created the world or the world created itself.
Matt opens with the "my God made everything for me" or "the world created itself" false dichotomy. This is a manipulation tactic popularized by Kenham a million years ago. Type in Kenham debunk, you will find a wealth of content on that alone. He then proceeds to confuse what the term atheist means.
So, atheists really do believe that the world created itself.
This is a deliberate manipulation tactic to make his audience conditioned to treat people outside their in-group with hostility in order to get them to mistrust whatever position he falsely associates with the out-group. This is explained in countless videos. Look up "questions for atheists debunk." Those types of videos usually routinely make the same mistake. Also search for "the psychology of tribalism" if you want to learn about the psychological phenomenon being triggered by this tactic. He then pulls the second law of thermodynamics buzzword out.
And even if the universe just poofed into existence via a magic act, that also violates the second law of thermodynamics because that states that everything in order tends towards disorder.
I remember that a decade and a half ago when I first started getting into this type of content, this was already on a list of weak sauce creationist arguments video. Link in the description for that video specifically, but if you want to understand why this point is horseshit, you can search for "creationism second law of thermodynamics debunk."
Everything is winding down in the universe, but evolutionists would have us think that everything is winding up, that everything's getting better.
He uses the term evolutionist here. This is another alienation type tactic by using this made up term that's not used outside creationist circles. If you have seen any videos from the "questions for atheists debunk" search, I guess you have already heard the counter arguments.
They don't just believe that life evolved, they believe that rocks evolved.
This is Hovindian gibberish. Search for "Can't Hovind debunk."
Even NASA said this.
Note that he is not providing a source for this quote. He just says NASA. This is reinvoking the Kenham false dichotomy from the start of the video. If you've been watching the videos from there, you already have your answer. Also search for "God of the Gaps."
Granite rock is incredible. We cannot create it. With all of our highest tech instruments, we can create diamonds, but we can't create granite. So I'm supposed to believe that a rock that cannot be created by man on purpose somehow created itself.
His logic here is that granite is a dumb rock, human beings are capable of creating things, therefore a granite can create less than humans, and therefore, since humans cannot create granite, granite also cannot create granite. Let's set aside the fact that artificial granite is a thing, and just focus on the important part of this argument, which is that nobody claims that granite created granite. Granite was formed via natural processes, which are studied by the science of geology. Geologists can explain how granite formed. Search for granite formation.
But if you were to type in on the internet, "how does DNA get destroyed?" the very first thing that pops up is this. It says DNA is vulnerable, it breaks down in sunlight and in water.
I also haven't heard the DNA in water thing. The debunk here is much simpler. This is complicated science. Type RNA in water or DNA in water to browser search and see what comes up. Now, I don't understand any of this, but neither does Matt. If he sources primary scientific literature that definitely proves that no RNA could have formed in any kind of wet conditions, I'll concede this point. Since there seems to be scientific consensus to the contrary, and many hypotheses are currently being tested about the conditions under which the first RNA strands were formed, a single line from some web search is not really relevant science.
Water destroys biology. It destroys organic molecules.
Life as we know it literally requires water to function. This is a prime example of the dishonesty Matt will go to manipulate his victims. Not only because it's blatantly false, but because from one sentence to the next, he reveals that he is willing to oversimplify a concept to the point of saying something completely different to strike an emotional chord with his listeners.
And even if You had a single-celled organism that somehow magically was created out of this soupy mess. What's it going to eat?
This is a question you can type into Google and find an answer. Again, blatant dishonesty in asking it like it's a gotcha rather than making the effort to learn the answer.
And then it's got to find another organism to reproduce with.
Blatant science denial, asexual reproduction via cell division is elementary school level science. Again, simple question, asked as a gotcha, the answer is readily available if anybody looks.
The unanswered questions will remain unanswered by the evolutionist and atheist community on this matter because they're not actually looking at things with a scientific lens. They're looking at it with an emotional lens.
So far, just in the first 4 minutes and 20 seconds of this video, Matt has tried to elicit confusion, fear, loyalty to an in-group, anger against an out-group, and religious fulfillment. Meanwhile, if you type abiogenesis research papers to scholar.google.com, it will give you 20,200 results. This is one niche field under the umbrella of biology, and this is just the work that you can freely find for a moment's effort. Matt either knows this, or he should know this given his investment in the topic. He's lying here.
Because they don't want to answer to God.
Search for atheists don't exist, debunk.
And if you were to type in, you owe your life to a rock, it brings up a paper called You Owe Your Life to Rock.
Then he brings up a specific document which is at least not rehashed nonsense. His analysis is specific nonsense, so I'll tackle it for you. He immediately mischaracterizes the document as a paper with the implication that it is primary scientific literature. It is not, it's an article. He takes the first forward sentence of this article and ridicules it out of context. Even the itty-bitty context he flashes on screen immediately invalidates this manipulation tactic if you just pause Matt's video. The reason he is so transparent about his dishonesty is that he knows that his victims will not view it with any level of critical thinking, therefore he can get away with anything.
But to say that granite rock conceived life? Granite rock isn't even living to begin with. At least Mary was alive when she conceived of the Holy Spirit.
Again, granny stuff. I'll take it. This is a creationist bingo combination of perfectly dishonest, a perfect example of an intentional lie, and perfectly stupid. The dishonesty part. He says granite conceived life, which is intentionally choosing an idiotic word to describe the process. The lie part. He implies that the claim is that life was created from granite. If he bothered to read even the paragraph he's about to flash on screen, he would understand that nobody claimed it and therefore this is a straw man. And the stupid part. He's talking about the origin of life and brings up Mary from Christian mythology rather than Adam and Eve. He doesn't understand the myths he's trying to sell.
They think that non-life brought life into existence, that unconsciousness brought conscious, sentient material into existence. That nothing somehow created something.
Search for nothing created something, debunk.
I heard somebody say one time that it's unbelievable what unbelievers will believe to remain unbelievers.
Search for it takes more faith to be an atheist, debunk.
And this paper also says that rocks and minerals must have played key roles in virtually every phase of life's emergence. Check this out. It says rare meteorite that fell on a UK driveway may contain ingredients for life.
He reads the titles of a few articles and just laughs. This is a very simple manipulation tactic. A good potential victim for Matt is somebody who already believes the manure he's selling, or somebody who sympathizes enough with his core ideas to fall into the former category soon. He flashes a few key phrases from the articles out of context to ridicule without having to understand the actual content he's mocking. He dreads the idea that his followers should read the full content that he derides. Because while most of them would have enough of a confirmation bias to not really learn anything from them, none of them would get closer to buying into Matt's shit, and maybe he'd even lose a few marks. It could only hurt him. Links to the articles down in the description.
That life ultimately came from a rock. That is what they believe, and that's hard to defend that position.
This is another intentional strawman. Nobody believes that life came from a rock. Some rocks played a part in the formation of the original life form. To find out what scientists actually believe, search for abiogenesis.
And to the scientifically illiterate atheist, he or she will just eat this right up. They'll think it's just, oh, this is incredible. This is great knowledge. As Christians, we're supposed to be free thinkers, and we're supposed to be skeptical of demonstrated lies like these ones that we're looking at.
This projection is another intentional lie and deception tactic. Once again, he's triggering those tribal emotions, then assigns a common criticism against the in-group, creationists, to the out-group, scientists, and the praiseworthy characteristic of the out-group to the in-group. Now both sides are saying the same things about each other and themselves. In tribal mode, the victim will not analyze the veracity of the claims with a critical mind, but defer to taking the praise and assigning the condemnation.